Didn't realize it at the time, but this very moment, this moment in this movie literally changed everything for me. The path that I assumed was about to unfold, the path of my life was erased, and a new path, a new story was about to begin. This moment in the final act of Park Chan-wook's Oldboy, still to this day my favorite movie of all time. A moment where, in pure desperation, Odesu cuts off his own tongue in an attempt to protect his beloved Mido from the horrific truth that he has just discovered. This is the moment that changed my entire life. But let me give you some context here. Let me give you some context. Because this isn't a Oldboy review, nor is it an analysis or a breakdown. There's plenty of videos like that already online. I've enjoyed many of them myself down the years. But having studied film and never really gone down that path career-wise, I've always wanted to be a part of the conversation. So I've decided that this is going to be my contribution. Now, I have loved movies all my life, but everyone says that, right? Though I have loved horror movies all my life. Luckily, a good friend of mine who I grew up with, he has the same mindset, the same perspective. So together we used to seek out the most horrifying, the most disturbing movies. In fact, one of my other favorite movies of all time, completely different to Oldboy, but very similar when you think about the story. A story of a man locked up in confinement for 15 years, only to finally find his freedom and wreak havoc throughout the rest of that movie's duration. But I digress. We are not talking about that movie here today. Now, eventually, I ran into a problem, because after years of seeking out the most extreme horror, the most disturbing horror, eventually you become desensitized and nothing shocks you anymore. That shock value just seemingly disappears. You're always looking for something to push those boundaries, but you get to a point seemingly where those boundaries can't be pushed anymore, and it becomes disappointing.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
By the time I got round to watching The Exorcist, I'd watched so many movies by that point that it simply did nothing for me. I actually think it's a very well crafted film, but in terms of the shock, in terms of the horror, in terms of its reputation, it just didn't live up to the hype. This desensitization wasn't just limited to horror, it was across all movies in that shock and awe category. I just didn't find anything surprising anymore. I still loved movies, I still loved watching movies, but I didn't find anything shocking. I wasn't finding those movies that left you sat there at the end questioning what you had just seen, asking questions about what you had just seen. And to me, they are the greatest movies. Looking back on this now, I realize I was limiting myself in what movies I was actually watching. I was watching the same kind of movie over and over again. Nowadays, we have so many websites, magazines, and particularly YouTube channels that discuss every single niche imaginable, all those dark movies. You can find the recommendations. Once you find something, you can find something even darker, even more horrifying. But back then, my resources were much more limited. And I think Total Film Magazine's list of the top 20 horror films of all time probably wasn't designed for a horror nerd like myself. It was probably designed for a more general audience who are just looking for those cheap thrills, those cheap jump scares. But for me, I wanted more than that.
Welcome to Film 2009, where drama is never a crisis.
Now, back in the early 2000s, anyone from the UK might remember that there was this Monday night TV show called Film, hosted by Jonathan Ross. Basically, he would review whatever movies were to be released that week. But as you got further into the show, he started to venture out a little from the obvious Hollywood choices, and he would talk about international movies towards the very end of each episode. And that is where I first saw it, Oldboy. It was just a review. It was a short segment. Something must have planted itself in my mind when I watched that TV show, because I didn't even go out the next day and watch the movie. I actually came across it years later when I was at university. Living in a share house at the time, and we had just watched another one of my now all-time favorite movies, The Notebook. And I was there flicking through, and as I reached maybe channel 5, I'm not sure exactly what it was, there it was. Oldboy was just beginning. So let's talk about experiencing Oldboy for the first time, because I've probably watched it 50 to 60 times by now. But the first time I watched this movie, it sticks with you. When we watch movies, we often discuss the weaving of narratives, separate storylines that eventually come together. And oftentimes we can see how these storylines are going to eventually collide. But the beauty of Oldboy, in my opinion, is that for much of the runtime, we have got absolutely no idea what is going on, how all these different characters, these people, these separate stories are all going to come together in the end. And it all comes down to that final act where Odesu, thinking he has all the answers, finally confronts Ujin in his penthouse. And this is literally one of the most gripping exposition dumps in film history, because just as Odesu thinks he has the answers, that he's figured the mystery out, Ujin methodically tears down every single thing that Odesu feels like he's about to throw out there. He has the answers for everything, and as he reveals the full extent of his revenge, what he has truly been doing over the last 20 plus years, the character dynamics that we have spent the entire 2-hour runtime building are completely shattered. And at that moment, both of these men, who we have seen in a certain light, are exposed for who they truly are. In this revenge movie, the centerpiece of Park Chan-wook's incredible revenge trilogy, the moment of victory, the moment Ujin realizes he has won, doesn't play out the way we would expect it to. Ujin, previously a cool, calm, collected individual, mastermind who, despite everything Odesu tries to throw at him, always seems to be in control. He doesn't celebrate his triumph, his victory with malice, simply starts laughing like a child. And he watches and savors the moments that Odesu unravels, as Odesu realizes everything that has happened in the past 15 plus years, and that Ujin had been in control of every single moment. We realize as we watch both characters react to what is now commonly known, that Ujin isn't an evil mastermind. He is more like a giddy child who has just got one over on someone else in his class. Let's take it back earlier. I mentioned that years of seeking out horror, of seeking out disturbing, shocking movies had numbed me. I was no longer moved. But every new era in life needs a trigger, a moment that ignites a passion, that gives birth to a new interest. And for me, this was that moment. As Ujin toys with Desu, the question of morality ceases to matter. Was this level of revenge justified once we know what Odesu had done? Absolutely not. That no longer matters to either of them. Ujin had won, and Ujin blamed Odesu's tongue for what had happened to his sister. In his desperate attempts to reason with Ujin, to plead with Ujin, and to spare Mido from the horrific truth of what has actually happened, he does the most extreme and unimaginable thing possible. Now, the reveal itself, partnered with the act that symbolizes it, was one of the most shocking things I've seen up to that point in my life. The story of Oldboy is outlandish, it's wild, it's very unrealistic at times. You have to really stretch the imagination, but it is presented, it is told in such a grounded, realistic way that you don't question that when you are watching the movie, when you are in the moment. The day after watching Oldboy, I wanted more. I wanted to see more movies like this. It doesn't mean that just because one movie from a certain director or a certain culture is enjoyable to you, that every movie is going to be like that. But I wanted to explore this new genre that had just imposed itself upon me. So I went down to a video shop, a DVD shop, some of you might remember, HMV. And as I found it, I found the Tartan Extreme collection, which was a collection of extreme Asian horror movies, revenge movies, thriller movies, etc., distributed by a company called Tartan Pictures in the UK. And over the coming weeks and months, I started to slowly make my way through many of these films, many of which I plan to discuss on this channel. So if you're still here watching, you might be wondering, okay, you enjoyed the movie, but how exactly did Oldboy change your life? Well, 4 years later, deep into this obsession with Korean, Japanese movies, I was sat there, but I was actually, in my personal life, feeling a bit lost, and I started to think about my options, and moving abroad suddenly came across my path. Moving abroad, but where would I go? We all have an entry point into a new interest, and I've never been a fan of K-pop, K-dramas, K-beauty. I know nowadays they are all very popular, but these Korean movies, these movies got me interested in Korea as a country, as a culture, and because of that, I followed that path and decided that I wanted to move to experience living in South Korea. Oldboy was that gateway, and when I did move there, my love of this country, my respect for this culture only continued to grow. Ironically, when I actually talked to my new Korean friends about this movie, about why I was interested in coming to Korea in the first place, many people there hadn't seen it. Despite its critical success, its acclaim, it was a very niche movie that many people had not seen. People had heard about it, but they had not seen it. So in turn, I ended up introducing a lot of Koreans to that movie. Now in 2025, I am sat here still in Asia, not in Korea anymore, but still in Asia. Had I not watched that movie that night, had I not been flicking through, had I not seen that Jonathan Ross review all those years ago, maybe I wouldn't have stopped on that channel, watched that movie, became interested in this culture, and ended up moving to the other side of the world. So I asked myself, did this movie change my life? Well, in my opinion, it absolutely did, and I am extremely grateful for it. If you've made it this far in the video, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is the first video on a new channel, which I'm going to be discussing some of those films that impacted me, the ones that I've referenced during this video. So if that's something you might be interested in, please consider subscribing. Drop a comment down below. Has any movie ever changed your life? Is there a movie out there that has simply set your path, that has changed your path? I would love to hear about that too. If you've enjoyed the video, please drop it a like, subscribe to the channel, because it really helps get your videos out there here on YouTube. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and until next time, bye bye.